Welcome, and thanks for joining me on the Ultimate 180 podcast. If you've ever felt exhausted, overwhelmed, or trapped in your own life and wish you were able to have a complete life makeover, then you're in the perfect place to learn how to pull an ultimate 180 and change your life beyond all expectations. I'm your host, Christina Walker, and today I'm uncovering a huge secret when it comes to planning and realizing your major goals in life. So many times, if our dreams are big enough, planning a way to realize this monumental life goal is where people get stuck. And if you've ever had a massive dream for yourself, one that would be life-changing, and either got stuck in the planning process or somewhere in between the setting of the goal and achieving it, then you are not going to want to miss this episode. I'm going to share with you a faster, more effective way to plan, take action, and actually achieve your wildest dream. So before we dive in, I want to ask you a quick favor. If this episode at all sparks something inside you, whether it's hope or inspiration, even a little nudge to think differently, please just take a quick second and just hit that follow button on your podcast app. It not only helps you stay connected to more life-changing insights, you are also helping more people find this podcast, more people who may just need a little help changing their life too. And if something really sparks to you or speaks to you, and if you get an aha moment, take a screenshot of this episode, post and tag it on social, because I want to know what your biggest takeaway is. I would love to hear about it. And you never know, you just might be the next featured Ultimate 180 story on the Ultimate 180 podcast. So let's get started as we navigate change together, 1 degree at a time. Let's do this. So what is that major goal, that dream goal you have in life? Have you ever tried to go for it somehow and you just keep getting lost on the way? Or maybe you keep banging against that same wall over and over whenever you try to plan or take action on getting there? Well, you are going to love what I've got to say. And hopefully you will walk away inspired and re-engaged to move forward again on that dream. And part of the problem is we are taught a very specific way to plan. And if you've ever taken a class or had somebody teach you how to plan properly, even if it's a party, even if it's just planning for a vacation, you always have to start with the end goal, right? We're taught start with the end goal. Great advice. You have to know where you're going and you need to be crystal clear. All of that is wonderful. Where is it that you want to go? And then that's where the problem starts, is we are taught then to reverse engineer from there all the way to now. And, in a vacation scenario, in a small project, even, a large work project, that can be good advice. But when you're trying to reach a huge life dream goal, an ultimate 180, if you want to change your life, there is absolutely no way you can reverse engineer it. And you want to know why? Because you don't have it within your brain to get there yet. You have no idea what those steps could even look like. And that's why you keep banging your head against the wall, is because how can you possibly plan for something when you have no idea how to get there? And that's why you're not there, is because you just have no idea. That dream is that big. So how do we change that? Because that's what we're taught. And what if I told you that method, that reverse engineer method, even if it did work, what if I told you that that's not the most efficient way to get there? It's not the fastest. It's not the best. Would you believe me? Well, keep listening. Because again, if we're using our brain, right, that got us to this point, and we have this massive goal, and yes, we're going to get other people's input, right? But if we are still in this vein of thinking, How do you think we're going to get to this massive goal and be able to reverse engineer it if there is a gap? There's like this huge gap in there of the unknown. And that's why it's such a huge goal. It is so unknown. It's like telling somebody who has a minimum wage job and they say they want to make $1 million a year. That's what their goal is, right? Or even to make their first $1 million. Because of where they have come from and their experiences, there is no way in their brain, it's very rare anyways, that they can think their way of how to reverse engineer, how to start something to get that. Because they might not even know what they want to do. And now they're presenting, okay, I want $1 million a year. That's a good goal, but you to ask them to reverse engineer it, they're not going to be able to. They have no idea. Does that mean they need to give up on the goal? No, absolutely not. So sometimes people in that case, they think if you were to ask somebody like that, well, how do you think, if there's one way, if you can think of one way to get to that goal of getting your first $1 million, what would that be? And many people will say, well, I'll never get there unless I win the lottery. And that is sad. Because, yeah, is that a way? Sure. Will they go broke trying? Possibly, right? That's probably not the most efficient way to get there. But that's where they stop. And I bet you their inner circle of people, all the people around them, because you surround yourself with like-minded people, mostly. If you ask them, hey, how do you think this person's going to make their first $1 million? They might not even have a better idea than winning the lottery. So how then are you supposed to reverse engineer anything? And that is what's keeping us from these huge dreams. Because if you asked a bunch of millionaires to look at this person and you said, how do you think that this person could make their first $1 million? They might have 10, 100 different ways, but these people don't have access. That's not the people in their inner circle. It's not the people that they're with daily. And that's why so many people sell courses. Now they sell courses to help you make money, but the problem is that, again, I've seen and heard so many of these courses, they want to give you a blueprint. There is no blueprint. I'm sorry to tell you, you cannot reverse engineer by somebody else's blueprint. That is their blueprint of how they got there. And will they have good advice? Yes. I think that you should take other people's courses. Absolutely. Every time you do, you get something different. So if you want to do it more efficiently, though, is not to get somebody else's blueprint. Don't buy blueprints, because that is somebody else's experience that you're buying, and that is not going to be yours. So then I bet you're thinking, well, okay, if I can't do any of these methods that people are trying to sell out there, or we've been told how to plan, what am I supposed to do? And I'm going to take you through the 5 steps. And they're not the 5 steps that you're probably used to hearing. So if you need more help with this, you let me know specifically. I'd love it if you tag on social specifically what you need help on, because it helps me help you. So the first step, and I said it at the beginning, you have got to get crystal clear on what you want. Absolutely crystal clear on what it is you want, and you need to stay focused on that. In fact, I just did an episode a couple episodes ago with Dr. Stephen Cohen. Is our part 2, and we talked about focusing and how important it is to continually to maintain focus. And sometimes people lose their focus, not only on the thing that they wanted, but they keep changing the thing that they wanted. And it's okay to change the end goal when you realize it's not what you really want. That's the only time you should change that, is if you start to go in that direction, you're like, ooh, I don't like anything about this. Like if you were wanting to become a doctor, let's say in college, and you're like, I've always wanted to be a doctor my whole life. And you start to get through school and you're at year 4 and you're about to make the next big step and you're like, I don't like this industry. That's when you should change course. That's when you realize that what you were focusing on, it's not what you really wanted. Maybe you realized Well, I thought just kind of wanted the money. And then you realize, oh my God, I'm not going to get the kind of money I thought anymore because of all of these student loans. And I don't want to wait another 20 years for that to happen. Maybe you make some realizations about it and then you change focus. That's the time you change your focus. But up until a time that happens like that, whatever your goal is, you have to be crystal clear. You have to feel into it. What would that mean to you? Let's say if it's a dollar amount, because people love to have a number. Say you want $10 million. Say 10 million. Why not? And that's their number. You got to figure out, well, what does that mean to you? What does that feel like to you? What is that? What's $10 million to you? What freedom is that going to give you? Because it's usually about freedom. It's about interests and freedom. So if you can figure out what it is that interests you and what freedom it buys you, then you can start on the path. But until that happens, there's no path to be solved. But the big takeaway here is that you have to continually maintain focus on that goal, whatever it is, and the feeling of that goal. How is it going to feel when you get there? How are you going to know it? Not only just monetary, because there's a lot more to it than just a number. How are you going to feel? Because if let's say I had $10 million and I was stressed out and I lost my family because I didn't pay attention to them and I did a job that I hated, that's not freedom. I don't think that's probably what you really want. And so sometimes people are so focused on the money that they don't realize that's not actually what they're asking for. They're asking for these three things. I want to be happy in my family so I have more time to be with them so I don't have to sit at this job every day and be sad. I want to take vacations with them. I want to feel free that we can at any moment in time I can take them on a great trip or I can start a hobby, right? There's a freedom aspect of this, of a way you want your life to go that's also associated with the money. So it's great to have money goals, but it's really important to get the feeling of what you want that goal to be and what that means to you. Because you don't want to get to the end and you say, oh, I got to the end, I got my goal, but I hate my life. We don't want that because that happens all the time. So the second most important thing is to be open to other avenues of achieving that same goal. We get so tied up, and this is where the reverse engineering thing can really bite us in the butt, is because if we re-engineer, we have a way in our head that's very specific of how we're going to get there. And again, if your goal is big enough, there shouldn't be any way you know how to get there. That means you're not dreaming big enough. Go back to that dream. But if we're reverse engineering, we're not allowing for there to be a better way. So some people might be saying, but then you're not planning and then you're not going to get there. No, you're going to get there. You got your eye on the prize, right? I remember in a math class years ago, and I didn't have a ruler, and my math teacher is like, draw from line A to line B. And I was like stressing because I didn't have a ruler. And my math teacher told me, like, look, here's a trick for you. If you hold your pencil at A and you look at B, and all you do is look at B, your line is going to get there. Now, it might not be the straightest line like a ruler would be, but right now that's not important in this exercise, and it's not important in life, is your body, when you are so focused on that second point, he's like, there's no way you can't get there. You'll get there. And sure as heck, every time I did it, he was right. And it wasn't the prettiest of lines, but life is not pretty. Life does not go in a straight line. Life is all over the map. But we have to allow for that because that is life. But life isn't a beautiful ruler with straight lines. So when you reverse engineer so specifically of how you're going to achieve this huge goal, you might be missing a much quicker and better way of getting there. You might not realize that, let's say you wanted that $10 million. And let's say you think the only way to do it is to work really hard and you're going to be the CEO and you're going to do this and that and the other. And it's going to be this hard life to get there. And like I said, when you get there, that might be all you have is your $10 million. You might not have the family that you wanted. You might not have all the things. You might not have your health anymore because you grinded it out for so long. And it took you X amount of years because you said, oh, it's going to take me probably 20 years. It's going to be, whatever it is. But what you missed were all of these opportunities along the way that could have gotten you to that same goal in a better, faster, more wonderful way that met the feeling that you wanted in the end. And I'll never forget Tony Robbins. Years ago, I had heard something. He was talking to a big group of people, and he pulled out this kid. He was probably in his 20s from the audience, and he asked the kid what he wanted to, how much money he wanted to make. And he said, I want to be a billionaire. So he said, okay, great. Well, what do you want to do when you're why a billionaire? He's like, because I want to own my own private jet. And he said, well, let me tell you, you don't have to be a billionaire to own a private jet, but keep going. And so the kid's looking at him like, oh, okay. And he doesn't really know where to go with it, right? He wants this lavish lifestyle, and he's talking about all these things that he wants. And he said, okay. Well, Tony says, well, as somebody who owns multiple private jets, he's like, what is your goal in owning a private jet? And he's like, well, I want to be able to take the private jet, wherever I want to go. And he said, well, how many times a year do you want to travel? He's like, oh, probably, realistically, probably 3-4 times a year. He said, okay, that's good. And he's asking him all these questions. And he comes back and he says, let me tell you something. And he goes through this list of how much it costs to own a private jet and all the fuel. And then you got to pay for the hangar, and you've got to pay for the staff, and you got to pay for the pilots. You got to pay for all the things that it requires to own private jets. And it's millions and millions and millions of dollars. And he said, but if you want to take a private jet wherever you go and you only want to travel 3-4 times a year, he's like, rent one. And then you only have to make $300,000 a year. How does that sound for you? And the guy was like, the kid was blown away. And what happens is we get these numbers in our head, but what we don't realize is they don't always correlate to the lifestyle that we're hoping for, right? And so if this kid, his goal was to be a billionaire just for these things, Tony's like, you can achieve that a lot quicker. And then the kid's like, well, maybe it's not even a billion. Maybe it's a much lower number, and maybe I don't even have to focus on the exact number. I just want these things. This is just how I want my life to go. And that was Tony's point, is sometimes you have to separate, right, your number. And then you have to realize that maybe there's some other ways of getting there, right? This kid could fly by private jet, but he didn't have to own one. That's a very different way of getting there. And he can get there so much quicker. So much quicker. He could even start once a year with a private. What if he charters a private jet for, $50,000? Okay, that's $50,000. Now he has completely changed his trajectory of life, but his main goal, his focus is still there. So the rigidity of our planning process restricts us from finding better, easier, quicker ways of getting to what our end goal is. So I'm hoping you're starting to understand why reverse engineering and our traditional way of thinking isn't going to make it to our biggest goals. So we have to be open. And when I say open too, is when we get into the feeling, and I've said this many times, when we get into the feeling of what we want to feel like at the end of our goal, we open up our internal radar in our brain, and our brain starts to hear things outside of what we're telling it all the time. We're telling it because if we're planning, we're telling it all the steps, step, 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 step. But if you start to allow your brain to hear and just say, you know what, I'm going to focus on the feeling of that goal, and I'll get to the next thing, but it starts the radar, and it opens up the radar to hear different ways of you achieving that same goal. And people will start having conversations around you. You will start getting messages from people that you haven't heard from in a while, and the most random conversations will happen. And it will start moving you towards the goal in a way you might never have thought of. And it happens quicker than you ever can imagine. It happens so much quicker than you could even plan because these things you don't even know about, right? This kid did not know that you could rent a private jet as many times as you want. And for him, 4, 6 times a year, whatever it was, it wasn't going to cost him. He didn't have to be a billionaire to get to his goal, which would have taken him so many years if he would ever even get there. And then he might have gotten there and said, oh my God, I don't want any of this. All I wanted was to ride in my private jet, right? Which takes me to the third item, which I almost spilled the beans, was to take inspired action. So we do have to sit and we can't just sit and do nothing and think about our goal all day. And we need to take inspired action, not just action, inspired action. And what is inspired action? Is when we are inspired, say, okay, like I'm just gonna put it on myself. Like, you know what? My next step, really want to do this podcast. Is this in alignment with my main goal? Yeah, because I love helping people in this type of format. Like, this is my thing. I love this. So, will I do this forever? Who knows? I'm not thinking about that right now. But right now, I'm going to take inspired action and I'm going to start and I'm going to do this and I'm going to continue this podcast because this inspired action aligns with the feelings of, let's say I reached my goal. Let's say I reached everything I wanted in that big dream of mine. Would this be something that still aligns with those feelings? Is this something that I enjoy doing? Is this giving me what I like in life? Yeah, it is. And if it's not, that's when you know you've got to take a pause. You know, me and my pauses. You got to take a pause and say, wait a minute, this might not be in alignment. And I think a lot of times we monetize everything so much, like, well, this job doesn't pay well, but this one does. So that's going to get me somewhere faster because that job pays more. But hold on a minute. Does that second job something you really want to do with your time? And is that what you would be doing? Would those be things that you're like, oh yeah, I enjoy that. Is that something you would be doing in that future self? No, but the first one was because you'd enjoy the experience of it. Like, oh yeah, that experience was great. I'm so happy I had that experience in life. Even if you're not doing it anymore, it's okay. But at that end person, that end goal, would you be saying, yeah, I like that. This is good. The problem is we think the money is what's going to get us there. And it's usually not the money that's going to get us there. The money comes after. But we're so taught to focus on and run towards the money that we lose the best and fastest way to get to where we really want to go. So I spilled the beans again. It's my pause. So we have to pause. We do have to pause at obstacles. And this is huge because a lot of times we think these are failures and we think, oh, that's it, I failed. I'm never going to get to that top of the mountain. I'm never going to get there because nothing I try ever works. That's the problem. Obstacles in our way are times for pausing. We need to refocus on that goal. What does it feel like at the end goal? Trust that this pause is going to give you the time to hear something different, a different path, something that you wouldn't have thought of on your own. Allow people in your life to make suggestion, and you may hate it, and maybe it's not the right thing for you, but you will start to hear things from other people, maybe from people you don't even know. Maybe a random show will come on or a random podcast will come on, and you'll hear that spark that will make you think differently to change that path and get you going back on a path in a different way towards that dream goal. And you're going to know it because you're going to be able to feel it. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to look back and I would want myself to do something like that. That's going to take me places. Or you know what? Why not try it? That's inspired action. That feels good. Why not try it? As long as it's not going to make you broke or hurt somebody, right? And put you in a bad spot. If it's good, it feels like it's moving you forward in some way, take that path Maybe that was the quicker path anyways. Maybe this thing that you keep hitting on is the only thing you know. And once you sit back and say, well, I'm just going to leave this for a minute and just let my radar take care of it and trust and just focus on the feeling of that end goal, the next thing's going to come to get you there. It may not look like what you think it is. So we have to be really open to it. And number 5, you have to continually come back, as I've said over and over. You have to feel into the achievement portion of that end goal. What does that feel like to you? Is it freedom? Is it joy? What is it? Do you have people surrounding you? Or are you alone in a cabin? What is it? What's that feeling? Are you in nature? Or are you just sitting in a room by yourself in front of a computer, knocking out your next novel? What is it? What does it feel like to you? What is that? And keep coming back at every step. So the steps, again, we're going to stay focused, right? And we're going to focus and be very clear with what we want and how we want to feel. We are going to be clear enough that we're going to not just put a monetary number on it, of what we're going to get out of it. What is life like going to be? What's the day in the life of the you of the future going to feel like? Stay clear on that. 2, we're going to be open. We're going to be open to other avenues of getting to that goal, that one goal, that one feeling, that day in the life of. 3, we're going to take inspired action. Even if it doesn't always make sense, we're going to take inspired action that feels like it could take you a little bit closer to that goal. We're going to, number 4, we're going to pause. We're going to take our pauses when we hit big obstacles. When you feel like you just can't get through this and this just isn't working out. When you've pushed through and you're at the point where you're like, I don't see this happening. It's a great time to pause and then say, you know what? Let me focus again, which is number 5, is to continue to focus and feel on that one goal. Because you can do this. You can get to your best self, your huge dream goal, so much faster than you ever thought possible. But you've got to stop planning it the way that you've always learned to plan it. And you know what? Honestly, why not just try? If it's not working out right now, if you're not at that dream goal right now, why not try it this way? What if it worked? What if it worked? So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode spoke to you in any way, if you got an aha moment, please just tag me on social. Tell me what that biggest takeaway is. I want to know about it. Hit that subscribe button, that follow button on your podcast app. And if you'd like more information on how to incorporate any of these tips into your ultimate 180 experience, join my VIP list. Join it on ultimate180.com and let's discover what's ultimately possible for you. You can also catch all my episodes there. You can catch them on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your shows.